He just came up to me one day and he goes, "You come off as so smart, but I wouldn't hire you." There were people who were supposed to be advocating for us and making sure research was done to improve our quality of life, but they were oblivious of who we really were, what we live with every day, how we have to survive. I want the next generation to look back at what my generation went through with this and say, man, I am so glad I didn't have to deal with that. But we still can do better. If we have people who are capable of working and we find positions for them instead of being underemployed, getting assistance, or having to fight for disability, they become contributing taxpayers.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host today. And in our studio, we have Natalie Boehm. Natalie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm fantastic. So before we get started, if you haven't done already, folks, I would be honored if you'd like, subscribe, hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. And without further ado, let's get to it. So Natalie, what we like to do on the show is give our audience a little bit of a background of who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do. So without further ado, it's your stage.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, good evening or good afternoon to the guests. My name is Natalie Boehm. I'm the president and founder of the Defeating Epilepsy Foundation. We're a 501c3 not-for-profit in Southern California, and our mission is to provide the advocacy and educational resources needed to the epilepsy community and our society. My passion for this began myself. I had seizures as a child. I've been battling epilepsy now for 45 years, and my seizures have been controlled for the past 21 years. But unfortunately, I've seen in my society there is a lack of education, a very high stigma still. A lot of people with epilepsy are not getting the care that they need. We have a mental health crisis. And so looking back, I told myself, I've been blessed enough now that my seizures are under control. I want to help others who may not be in the same situation and be able to bring the resources to them that otherwise the larger organizations have failed to do so.
Wow, that's amazing. I think one of the things that go into a little bit about some of the challenges or the stigma that people with epilepsy face, wherever in life.
Well, there's so many that people are facing in life. One is just being taken seriously at times in the medical field. A lot of people are frustrated because they're not really understanding what they're living with. For example, growing up, I just knew as a child I had to take my medicine and listen to the doctor. I really didn't understand the type of epilepsy I had, the kind of seizures I was having, the side effects of my meds, and the impact on my overall wellness. And once I took the steps to educate myself, I sat back and just realized there were so many decisions in life I would have made differently if I had had this education, if I would have had this resource. And I feel once I was able to educate myself, my attitude was I have to help others understand this. If this is something they're going to live with for the rest of their life, or they have a child, a friend, a loved one on this battle, I want to help bring some peace of mind to them. I want to empower them so that they can advocate and care for themselves.
I see. I don't know that I would, know of someone like, looking at someone, I don't think I would know that they had epilepsy, or, I mean, how does that work? How does that translate into, interacting with other people?
Well, epilepsy is an invisible illness. A lot of times, people will recognize it if someone has a severe form of it. There are some forms of epilepsy that are due to genetic mutations, and they can come along with a lot of other complications, such as behavioral disorders or learning disabilities, neurodivergent conditions, which really have a very hard impact on their quality of life. Myself, my seizure started due to a traumatic brain injury. And if you would see me, like obviously now here on the show, unless I told you I have a neurological disorder, I've had seizures in the past, you would look at me and go, really? You know, you're dealing with something like that? Because if you see me out and about, I'm blessed enough where I have been able to be gainfully employed. I do drive. I'm blessed with a wonderful husband and 2 children, something at one point in my life I never thought I'd be able to do. I've been able to go on for higher education. So a lot of things that so many people can do, and it's considered sadly able-bodied. I just don't like how that is put together, but sadly it is. I've been able to do it, and so many look at it like, "Oh my goodness, I'm special," and it's like, "No, it's not being special." I've accepted that I have a challenge in life with my health. Okay, it's not great, but unfortunately, it's not going away. It's a journey in my life. So if this is gonna be part of my journey, I'm gonna be positive and make the best of my journey and do what I can to help others along the way.
What is it? What kind of support do? So I'm thinking from the perspective of my son, for example. He had a speech impediment. He had a difficult time speaking, and as a result, there were certain things that he wouldn't raise his hand in class and that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if people who have, people with epilepsy, suffering from epilepsy, do they have that same sort of or different sort of like mental limitations that may slow them down or prevent them from doing certain things?
Depending the type of epilepsy they have and the type of seizure they have, it can. Well, a lot of people, when they think of epilepsy, they think of it as a one size fits all, which isn't true. There's multiple different types of epilepsy, different types of seizures, and the challenge with care is something that keeps me alive could kill the next person. So it's a very challenging condition. Myself personally, when I was in school, I was on a lot of medication, and I was in that situation where I really didn't want to raise my hand because every day was a different day. There were days I was on it and I felt great. And then there were days I was burnt out and I couldn't focus. So a lot of people where, their challenges are, and I was guilty of this at one point in my life, there's hesitation because we wonder, are people going to take us seriously if they know we have seizures? A lot of people will hide that they have epilepsy. I did for years because I needed to be gainfully employed. In my situation, the government was like, well, we acknowledge you're disabled. Yes, you are sick, but you're not sick enough to be on SSDI. So you got to figure this out. And then if people are open and honest with having epilepsy, employers will go, well, your resume looks great, but they can't say right out that, they don't want to hire you because of epilepsy. It's, well, the position's been filled, or, we're going to talk about it. If we want you, we'll call you back. And as soon as you walk out, that resume is going through the shredder. So there's a lot of people who, live in silence and live in fear. And it's really a shame because we shouldn't be in the 21st century at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there seems like, I mean, it sounds like, and I guess that's what you're doing with your business, really educating employers on, I guess, kind of closing that gap, if you will, that
Yeah.
knowledge gap with bringing, I don't want to say bringing people with epilepsy, but understanding the disease and how to care for the people that they would bring into their organization. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to, work with obviously work with people with epilepsy, but in the business aspect, I am trying to educate business owners, not just for people with epilepsy, but with other disabilities, because a lot of them don't realize the tax benefits they can get. There's free training with the EEOC on how to have somebody in your company with a disability. I don't think they realize at times the positive impact and the brand they can build. Harvard University for years has been studying the benefits of hiring people with neurodivergent conditions. In one article that I read, a gentleman there, he was on the spectrum. He was a data analyst, and his colleagues went, he has his noise canceling headphones on. He really keeps to himself. kind of awkward, always playing with his shoelaces, but he's the number one data analyst on our team, and he has taken us to a whole new level. And what had held him back for years was he had a hard time getting through interviews. He would shut down, so he couldn't get the job. And then finally, someone looking at his experience said, you know what? I got to give him a chance. I got to give him a chance. And he was able to show that despite these challenges, with the right accommodations, with the right environment, he could thrive. And it's the same thing with people with epilepsy. I had a conversation about 4 years ago with a local entrepreneur out here where I am. And he just came up to me one day. We were having a network, and he goes, "You come off as so smart, but I wouldn't hire you." And I said, "Well, I appreciate your honesty in that. Can you tell me why you wouldn't hire me?" And he's like, "Well, what if you have a seizure at work and you get hurt? I don't want to pay your medical bills. What if you frighten one of my clients and they don't come back?" And I said, 30 years ago, I would understand completely. I go, but I can't support you on that today, and I'll let you know why. He said, let's say you have me in an administrative position. I can work from home. I can send you my work in Dropbox. We can meet on Zoom. I go, you don't even have to have me on site, but you can brag to your investors that you have taken somebody who has been told no 100 times. You gave them that yes, and now they're helping your company grow. They're helping build it and bring it to a level you didn't think was possible. And he froze and he just went, I never thought of it that way. I said, no, I know you haven't. I go, that's okay. I go, now you see the work why I'm doing this work. Because, people are not used to working with people with disabilities in the workforce, or it's very limited work. I said, I want people to think outside the box and see the opportunities they can create for their companies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I've got a friend. She's a movie producer, and she's autistic, and she's uh, you know, the work that she does is absolutely amazing, and the drive that she has to get things done. She's focused and she's very, very detailed, and it's really amazing. I mean, I know that I could not do the work that she does. Really interesting. So what comes to mind for me? I mean, you talked about the gentleman, the entrepreneur that you spoke with, and you also talked about the gentleman that that was working at Harvard. And so the question comes to mind is, how do we as entrepreneurs hire someone that we don't quite understand? And I know this is kind of your mission, or this is your mission, but
Yeah.
to bring in some, like, you educated the gentleman and said, hey, I can work on Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. But bringing in someone that's doesn't necessarily communicate as well, or whatever that disability is. How do we get ourselves into a position where we understand how to bring them into the organization?
Well, one thing I've been working here in California I've been working with the State Council for Developmental Disabilities, and they help people not just with epilepsy, but people on the spectrum and other conditions that a lot of people don't know about.
Hmm.
And one thing I have really pushed with them, we had an event last year. I said, you need to bring businesses into your environment through an event, webinar, because businesses need to learn about these conditions, or if they're going to hire people, how to help them. A lot of them will go through organizations like regional centers, or they get them involved with nonprofits who are in workforce development, and they will help these people learn different skills. And then they collaborate with businesses so that they can be hired. But a lot of businesses don't know about the workforce development programs. And I feel the government, the states and counties and stuff really aren't marketing out to these companies. We have people available who want to work, who want to learn, who want to create a difference in their life and not be falling through the cracks as underemployed or fighting for disability, but being able to support themselves and become contributing taxpayers. And I feel right now the lack of communication is what is preventing business owners from being able to move forward with this because unless you really dig into it and do the research, a lot of them don't know where to start.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, you have to realize my perspective. Yeah, it's in my job description. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm thinking from the perspective of I need to drive revenue, I need to keep my costs low, et cetera, and I'm focusing every day on that, on the tasks that I have to do, and not at all minimizing what you're saying, but to educate myself on how to work with someone with disabilities. It's extra work, and so what I think I would love to hear is, about perhaps that return on investment. If I'm going to take the time to learn and go through the process and that sort of thing, as a business owner, I mean, that's my responsibility. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? Why it would be worth, my time and energy to learn more about this?
I think what would be the benefit is one, a lot of these individuals who are doing the work, if you're looking to save, a lot of them are on what are called the Ticket to Work program, where they work so many hours a week and then get the remainder of their disability. They already have benefits. So for smaller businesses, let's say they're growing and they're at a point right now where they can't offer a very big benefits package such as really good health insurance or retirement and stuff, this is a good way for them to start to grow. And then when it comes to brand building, a lot of people who are looking to collaborate with other companies are looking at not just the revenue you're bringing in or what you're doing. They want to see how you stand out. How do you shine? I've found a lot of businesses are now starting nonprofits of their own and giving a percentage of their revenue to the nonprofit for a cause because it shows they're practicing corporate social responsibility, but because they're building their brand through working hard, bringing in a revenue, bringing in return on investment for their, investors, they're also showing, we care about where we are, our business here in this community, and we want to help our local community because we want to be able to thrive and grow. So I find business owners who have been able to think out of the box and do something like this. For example, we have a company here who did that. They make fire helmets and they hired a lot of people on the spectrum because what was good about the work they needed done, it was repetitive, it was structured, there wasn't a change, so they could create the environment for these people and be able to grow. I mean, they're growing at massive levels and they're getting more and more involved in expanding out in Riverside County.
Wow. Wow, I love that. I love that. So what came to mind to me, as you were describing that, I mean, as a consultant, I often make recommendations, to my clients. And if I was to make that suggestion to a client, I think that could be a good first step. However, what would be that next step? How difficult would it be and I'm going to say what I want to do is I want to invest in the community. I want to bring someone, I feel like my language is really poor in this. I apologize.
It's okay. No, no worries. Well, it's a topic that a lot of people really haven't been talking about. It's really something I feel is just really starting to come to the table. So to explain in detail or ask specific things, it can be challenging because I think for so many business owners hearing this, it's like, I didn't think of this. I mean, I've seen so many professionals, like my husband is a dentist. So many dentists are just, okay, I come in and take care of my patients. Where my husband, right now he works for university. He's starting to move away from academia into private practice. But every year he goes out to the Staples Center or he goes to different community centers because there's so many people who can't either afford to get to a dentist or they can't even get down to the university to see him. And he'll go and do exams and pull teeth and try to help them find care. And that's his way of giving back. And I'm so proud of him for that because most will go in, okay, I have these patients. I want to bring in a revenue of X dollars today. Okay, I'm good. That's it. And they limit themselves.
Yeah. I love the way you just said that, they limit themselves. my dad and my sister-in-law have all worked with, special needs people in special needs programs. And so I've always been around, people with, with different disorders, behavioral, whatever that's going to be. And it's always been fine for me. And so I love the way that I love the way that you phrase that. So back to my back to my question. So I'm a consultant. I'm working with a client. I'm saying, hey, this let's look at our larger community, and see if there's someone that may not be a typical ideal employer or employee can come fill the job. Someone that might be disabled, and see if we can make something work. What is my next step in that? I mean, it's one thing to have the idea, but something else to really put the ball.
Well, one thing I would suggest is finding a workforce development program in their area. There's a number of organizations who specifically will train people with disabilities. And then depending on what it is, finding a position that would work for them. With working with the state right now with my husband moving forward with his work, we're going to have somebody come in. Our goal is to hire somebody with a disability to help with sterilization because it's very simple, very task. The challenge is, I would say, if you were talking to a client, is it has to be a specific job. It might be something that doesn't work in their business because if it's, let's say it's an environment where it's overstimulating or something where there's multitasking or things are changing a lot, that can be triggering for some people. They may not be able to focus or they may freeze. So I have to say, not every job is for somebody with a disability. And I think that is part of the problem. Is it's something where, let's say your client needed a secretary for their firm or something. It would have to be structured. They're coming in to answer phones and file. They'd have to be trained for certain things. So let's say one day they came in and said, I need you to fill out these documentations. And they haven't ever done that before. That may overstimulate them or they may freeze. They may get upset because they don't know what to do. So it would be very important with them working with a employment place for training to say, this is the specific position I'm looking for. Here would be the duties. I need somebody who can follow a program like this. Trying to make a sudden change or maybe adding a lot of work onto it could really backfire. So they would have to have goals in place for that position.
So would they have I'll use the term like a coach that
Yes.
they work with? Yeah, through the whole process?
Yeah. What they do is these workforce development programs will have a job coach or a case manager for the individual who would be looking for work, and they would be communicating with the employer.
Okay. So would the employer require, now we talked about education, my understanding, we talked about education just in terms of, return on investment, understanding tax benefits and that sort of thing. But is there a level of education that the case manager would provide the business owner just to help them, just to make sure everybody's acclimated properly?
They will provide the information for the client they're looking to help with employment. One thing I would do is I would suggest to any business owner to have a good understanding. Let's say they were to hire me. I'll use myself as an example. I haven't lost consciousness in 21 years, but I still a couple times a year, when the barometric pressure changes badly, I get migraines and I could have what could say is like a surreal feeling. I'm there, but I can't concentrate. On days like that, I know I'm not going to be able to work. So I would need an accommodation if something like that were to happen be able to stay home and rest. Or what would be another thing? I'm the kind of person where I like to have structure. I focus best. So I would be letting my employer know, anything I have to do on a daily basis, I need to be able to have it on a notepad or some type of program. If we have meetings, I need a tool like the Google Calendar because like when we met today, if I hadn't put in my calendar you and I were meeting, I would have not shown up. and not because I would want to be ghosting you or not do anything. It's just the way my brain works. It's not there. There's no meeting. I will not just remember, oh, yeah, today I'm meeting with Rick. So each person would need to have certain tools to be proficient on the job.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm that way with my calendar too.
Okay, so it's not just me. Okay,
100%. I have to have a calendar. I tell my kids want to talk, send me an invite.
but that's the best thing to do.
Absolutely. 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 Cool. I want to hear about your journey starting your business.
Well, what led me to launching the business was for years I was trying to reach out to the larger organizations, the Epilepsy Foundation and others. I want to advocate. I want to volunteer. What can I do? And silence. I was being ghosted. And I knew a lot of people in the community who were also experiencing the same thing. And so I felt that, that there were people who were supposed to be advocating for us and making sure research was done to improve our quality of life, but they were oblivious of who we really were, what we live with every day, how we have to survive. At the time, it was when Trump was in his first term and the Congress was talking about removing the protections for the Affordable Care Act. And I wrote a letter to all 100 senators saying, you can't do this. This is going to be a death sentence for my community and so many others in America if they cannot get coverage, if they cannot get their medicine or their care. And I took those letters, and along with that, I wrote a personal letter to the former CEO of the national office. And when I took it to him, I said, put me to work. I don't want any money. I don't want anything. I want to help my community. And he's like, oh, this is amazing. When you get back, I'm going to get in touch with the team out there. Why don't you sit down with them? Let's set some goals. Heard nothing. And I just finally said to my husband, I'm not being taken seriously. So I knew I needed to educate myself. I couldn't just jump into making a business, not really understanding the business structure, a plan, target audience, so many of the things that entrepreneurs need to learn. Or no, I'm sorry. So I went back and I got my MBA with the goal of focusing on creating a nonprofit. Met lots of wonderful people. A lot of my professors supported me. I'm still in contact with them. And then when I finished school, I had all my paperwork together. I had put my business plan together and I launched. Now, the crazy thing was, not long after I launched is when the pandemic happened. And everyone looked at me like, you are not going to survive. And I'm like, well, we're going to right now have to adapt to what is going on if we are going to survive. So the first 2.5 years, we focused highly on our educational mission. I mean, pretty much we were running as a virtual foundation. We were awarding scholarships to college students. We were working with people with advocacy needs, but we couldn't get out and do events. I really couldn't go out and do public speaking. So I really had to use social media as a voice to survive. I had to go through YouTube as a way to get the word out there. And thankfully, with so many people who have supported me on this, we were able to survive. So far in the 5 years we've been operational, we have awarded 11 college scholarships and 5 grants for a seizure alert dog. And we have been able to take our information. We have 5 YouTube channels for different languages, and we are connecting to people all over the world, bringing them information they otherwise may not have been able to get.
Wow. So you're making the world a lot smaller. That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
that's my goal.
So
Bring us
you
all
must,
together.
yeah. You must inspire people. I mean, just your presence, being there, but you're doing things that most people aren't willing to do. You're putting your neck out there, so to speak, in some ways. I mean, do you hear back from people that have said, "Hey, Natalie, I loved your talk," or "I love seeing you," or "I love seeing what you're doing." Do you hear stuff like that?
Times I knew when I made the decision to do this, it was going to make a lot of opportunities go away. I knew that I really had to have a strong goal, not just for this, but also for my career. I knew I was either going to be self-employed or I was going to have to work as a consultant. That's what I did. I made my goal to be a consultant so that I could either work through a company or work on my own and bring my own clients in, because I knew the moment people saw it, sadly, it was going, those opportunities were going to go away. When I first finished school, I had a lot of banks looking at my profile on LinkedIn. I had other companies looking at my profile. And the first thing they saw when they saw my nonprofit, never saw them or heard from them again. So I know I could have very easily not dealt with this and go, well, it is what it is, and gone on and gotten a job somewhere in corporate LA and been the end of it. But I just felt in my heart, I can't remain silent. I want the next generation to look back at what my generation went through with this and say, man, I am so glad I didn't have to deal with that. But we still can do better, and we're going to. If I can at least get that done in my lifetime, I feel I've done my job.
Love that. I love that. What is that 5 year horizon kind of look like for you? What kind of impact have you made? What are people doing differently in the business world as a result of what you've done?
I feel that people are taking a step back and thinking more about how they go about establishing their team. And I find slowly that more people are wanting to at least learn more. They may not be jumping on it at this point, but they're not just going, brushing off like, okay, yeah, that's nice. It's, well, I didn't know these resources existed. Oh, when I hear about something like autism, when they think of autism, they think of somebody who has severe autism, is dependent on others. They don't realize that there's people who are high functioning, or someone like me having my condition controlled. They don't look and see, oh, well, look what they've been able to do. Oh, yeah, they can work too. They can contribute to society. And it's what it really comes down to. It's fear of the unknown. If you don't understand it, you're hesitant. And I can understand that in the business world, because when you're here, like you said, trying to create revenue, trying to get a return on investment, getting people to invest in your company or collaborate with you on projects, you want to be on your game. And I can understand that people, if they don't know the information, would be afraid and say, well, what if something goes wrong and what I was working on falls through? How do I survive? How do I continue my business, my dream, my passion, if I take this one risk and it backfires? And it's why the education is going to be so important for us to bring to companies.
It's really interesting. I mean, it's almost like we need, and I'm just going to speak bluntly. I mean, it's almost like we would need some proof because, and I'm not saying that. I mean, let me say this differently. So when we bring someone in, when we bring anyone into a company, there's always a risk. We've got cultural risk, we got, capability risk, et cetera, et cetera. When we look at someone that is disabled, again, we don't really know, we don't really understand like how to work with them. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of that's that unknown that you're talking about. It could be someone, with autism. I like the example of autism. I was working with a software developer a few weeks ago who was autistic, very high functioning. His social skills weren't as polished, as one might
Yeah,
be used to. He was very, very blunt. And I got it. I understood, where he was coming from. But in an environment, in a culture, it changes the dynamic.
it can. That
You
is
get a
very true.
ripple effect.
And I think that's where training on both sides is necessary. I won't say that when somebody comes into the workforce and they're disabled, you just let them in. They need the training to understand this is the climate you're going to be working in this field.
Yeah,
This is what your colleagues are going to be doing, and these are going to be your responsibilities, and you have to work together.
yeah.
And I think that's why with each person, it's such an individual thing. Like, I'm able to work well with people where I have a cousin of mine is an engineer. great guy, extremely smart, but he has to have his space when he works. And for the work he's doing, okay, that works. But if he had been in another profession, very much it wouldn't work. So I think that's a lot. There's so many pieces to the puzzle. And I can understand, with society right now, with the economy right now, it's a scary time for people to say, am I going to take that risk? But I feel we have to start somewhere, even if it's just the education and building on it. I feel in the future, it's going to be so important for people who are able to work despite a chronic illness or something to be part of the community. And a lot of people have said, well, what about the money? And we had a company out here in San Bernardino County. I can't remember exactly where they were, but the gentleman created a disability program. They were in a warehouse. When they hired the people they did on, their production time went up. They were having better output because these people had been told no 100 times about a job. They were now having less turnover because now they had more loyal employees who wanted to show what they could do. They wanted to shine. And that's why I look at things and I say, if we have people who are capable of working despite this, if we find positions for them, if we create jobs now instead of being underemployed, getting assistance or having to fight for disability because they could take years. Now they become contributing taxpayers. Now you have more money going into the community. You have your GDP increasing. I mean, they've had studies. It was by one of the lead disabilities association here in the US. And I can't remember the name of it, but they did a study and they showed that if 1% of the people with disabilities were able to get into the workforce, they could increase the GDP by $1 billion. $1 billion. So, I mean, if we're able to do this, it could create such a win-win situation for businesses, communities, individuals. It's just the fear of the unknown. They're slowly growing out there. Slowly, it's starting to build, but we really have to work as professionals. I feel, at least, I want my company to shine and stand out. I want to help other businesses build that brand and go, okay, my average competitor is here, but I'm here and I'm not going to let them catch up to me. I'm going to show how I could think out the box. I could set reasonable goals, things that people wouldn't be able to critically think about. I'm on that path.
But while you were talking, what I was thinking about is I had mentioned like the cultural change, and you talked about education, and it seems as though, you know, it could be a situation where we actually go into an organization and train them to show them, show like the team, hey, this is the type of organization we are. We're going to bring in, people that are disabled, et cetera, and these are the accommodations and that sort of thing. So it
Yeah,
wouldn't be so. I don't, I'll use the term roughly disruptive, to the environment. That could be that could be a whole thing.
it could. And it'd be a really wonderful thing because the one study I told you about from Harvard Business Journal, that's exactly what they did. And even though the gentleman on the spectrum had they said his awkward moments, he wasn't social like the average person, they were able to work with him and he was able to create such a positive impact on their team. So I think with having people to come together, it's so important because I was so happy to hear you talk about climate because the one frustration I've had in business is I hear so many business leaders talk about the culture they have. And while they have this vision of a wonderful culture, they're not focused on their climate. And a lot of times because of miscommunication and lack of trust and so many things because they haven't focused on it, the climate is toxic and then you have turnover, you can't grow, you plateau. And then they're going, well, what are we doing wrong? Well, you don't really know each other. You haven't seen where others shine. What have you done to become a team instead of worrying about I'm management, I'm in this position, or I just do this? It's how do you all come together? And I love the fact of what you said is if you brought somebody in and the whole team is aware of it, how can they become part of the team? And the team sets goals and keeps breaking those goals and moving up and up together, and they all shine together.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. I think the other benefit, the other bonus that you get is we start to embrace members of the community that, sometimes are overlooked. We as like team members, you know, um, I think that's huge because I mean the bigger community, the more people we invite into our communities, the more fulfilled we are as people. And, it's like
Absolutely.
it's not like it's not a financial return on investment, but it's a, "Hey, you know what? I feel good about myself because I'm, embracing a different type of thinking than I used to. I'm more educated, I'm more confident, in going out into the world, embracing different people. I mean, it's like kind of like going to college. When you go to high school, you're with the same, X number of people, for 4 or 5 years. But when you go to college, you're exposed to so many more people and your mind expands. Especially when you have international students, your mind expands, and that would really be really cool. I love your work.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Final question for you. So the name of the show obviously is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. And while most people define winning in a certain way, whatever that's going to look like, the hard thing that we have as humans, business owners, is that relentless pursuit, continuing to go and go and go, regardless of what is happening in the world around them. What would be your recommendation to a founder, to someone that's listening to the podcast?
Please take care of yourself. I can say it. I had to learn this the hard way. Being in business, my education, so many things that I've done in life, I dove in 100%. And I was that kind of leader where when I saw a team member stuck, don't worry, I'm here to help you with it. I had people who'd reached out to me, can you help me? I could never say no. And it led to burnout. I got real sick from it. And having to I for a short time took a medical leave to get better. And I slowly came back to my duties. But I just felt so bad in the beginning getting help for my health. And I thought, oh my goodness, I failed my team. I failed I just beat myself up. And then I realized, okay, I'm not going to use the word fail. This is a learning experience. So now I have to take care of me so I could take care of my team. And I took the steps to prioritize what was the most important thing for myself, for my well-being, so that I could focus on the most important things for my business and my team. And it was hard for me, but I finally had to build the confidence to put my head up and shoulders back and say to people, no, I can't do it right now. I have to get through this first. My team needs this done. Once I focus on this, if I can be there for you, I can. But right now, no. And I think so many business owners, because they want to grow, they want to shine, they want to take their passion, their dreams to the levels they want. We have a hard time saying no. We become workaholics, and then our business, that becomes our life. You have to live for so much more than your business. You have to find that healthy balance. And that is what's going to help you to become strong and resilient and be able to take the steps you need to grow and shine. So please don't be a workaholic like I have been for so many years and having to learn the hard way. Set those business goals, but also set goals for you, because at the end of the day, you matter. And without you, how's your team going to get by? You're as much important to them as you are with everything else.
That was an amazing answer. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Gave me flashbacks too. I mean, I just want to be transparent about that. I totally get it. I totally get it. Natalie, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn about more about you and your work, what's the best way to do that?
You can email me at defeatingepilepsy@gmail.com. And please visit our website at www.defeatingepilepsy.org. I would love if your guests go there. I always appreciate feedback. Is there something there you found inspiring that you loved? Is there something you feel we are missing? Please don't hesitate to email me with any questions about any knowledge of what we do, or if you have a friend, family member, somebody important in your life who is dealing with epilepsy and you need to talk or help them find resources, that's what we're here for.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Natalie, thank you so much. This has been fun. This has been educational. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. And folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of The Relentless Pursuit of Winning. We'll catch you next time.